I stepped outside, holding a leash, ready to take my dog for a walk and enjoy a short run. As I observed my neighbors starting their cars and heading to work, I let out a deep sigh, realizing I had no office or workplace to rush to anymore. Following my business's bankruptcy, I was stuck with a huge pile of debt, and I'd be spending another day at home, trying to revive my once thriving business, which had met with nothing but failure. The weight of these setbacks left me feeling lost in a world that continued moving forward without me. I noticed my neighbor James walking over from his well-maintained driveway. James ran a successful car import business and often had different luxury cars parked outside his house. Today was no exception, and James walked confidently with a big grin. James greeted me cheerfully, almost too cheerful. I responded with a forced smile, even though I noticed his grin seemed to grow wider. I remarked on another day of relaxation for him, though his comment stung. I calmly mentioned that every day brings its own challenges. James just chuckled and said he had cars to import, then strolled away. I watched him go, reminding myself not to let his insensitive remarks affect me. I knew some people couldn't resist the urge to gloat. Returning home used to bring me great comfort, but now it felt like stepping into a storm, not because of the walls or the furniture, but because of someone who lived there, my wife, Nicole. Nicole, who worked as an insurance agent, had grown distant and cold since my financial troubles began. The difference was stark. Gone were the days when she would excitedly call me to come home early for a romantic dinner or snuggle on the couch for a movie. Our conversations, once warm and affectionate, had become brief and mechanical. The home that had once been a sanctuary of love now felt like a reminder of what we had lost. I attempted to bridge the growing gap between us by mentioning the times when Nicole used to check on me during the day. Nicole responded curtly without looking up from her papers, indicating that things change. One evening, after returning from work, I gathered the courage to approach Nicole, driven by my longing to rekindle the closeness we had once shared. I softly brought up our first anniversary, recalling the candlelight dinner on the terrace and our dance under the stars. Nicole looked up from her laptop with an unreadable expression and inquired about the purpose of my remarks. I confessed, saying, I miss us. I miss how things used to be. She audibly sighed, closed her laptop, and explained that she didn't have time for this at the moment, as she was swamped with work. She emphasized that being at home didn't grant her the luxury to sit around and reminisce. I felt a sharp sense of rejection and expressed my desire to spend time together as we used to. Nicole's eyes hardened as she mentioned that times had changed, highlighting her responsibilities while I pursued my activities. She indicated that she didn't have time for sweet talk and suggested that we could discuss things when she wasn't buried with work. I nodded, feeling the weight of the distance between us. All right, Nicole, whenever you're ready. As I walked away, the cold silence of our home felt more pronounced than ever. While walking through the park with my dog, a newfound optimism began to well up within me. Despite the failure of my business, I realized it was just one obstacle in the grand scheme of life. I whispered to myself, patting my dog, "It's just another challenge. I can and will rise again." Upon returning home from the dog walk, I noticed Nicole at the dressing table, gracefully applying lipstick and makeup. Her reflection caught my eyes, evoking memories of the early days of our love. I approached her with a gentle smile and complimented her beauty. Nicole didn't even glance at me. She continued applying her makeup. A moment later, when she was finished, she looked at her own reflection and smiled, remarking, "I am beautiful." In an effort to bridge the gap between us, I casually inquired about her work schedule for the evening. She paused, eyeing me curiously. "Around 7, I think. Why?" I winked and replied, "Oh, no reason. Just thought I'd ask." In my heart, I planned a surprise. Tonight, I would prepare a home-cooked dinner, complete with her favorite wine. It was a small gesture, but perhaps it could mark the beginning of healing our bond and regaining her attention. After all, mending our relationship might just be the motivation I needed to rebuild my career. Was this response better or worse? I spent the day refreshing our home with upbeat music playing in the background. I wanted the atmosphere to radiate warmth and welcome for Nicole's return. With every clean surface, washed dish, and empty trash, I felt a small sense of accomplishment. After making our home shine, I headed to the grocery store to gather ingredients for the evening's dinner. As an afterthought, I decided to visit the wine store to get Nicole's favorite wine. Upon entering, the familiar doorbell chime greeted me, and Pam, the saleswoman, recognized me with excitement. Pam greeted me, saying it had been a while and asking how I'd been. I gave a half smile and replied that I had had better days, but was getting by. I inquired if they had a bottle of the rose wine, to which Pam playfully raised her eyebrows and teased about planning a romantic evening at home. I chuckled, attempting to sound nonchalant, and confirmed that it was something like that. I mentioned that Nicole had been there about an hour ago and had picked up a bottle of the same wine. Pam seemed to realize she might have said too much, and she stammered, suggesting that maybe Nicole was planning her own surprise. Clearing her throat, she efficiently wrapped the bottle for me, hoping to change the subject. As I headed home, my hopeful mood was replaced by a swirl of thoughts. I contemplated the possibilities. Could Nicole also be preparing a surprise for me? But why would she buy the wine in the afternoon? I gripped the steering wheel, a mix of anticipation and anxiety taking hold. I decided not to jump to conclusions. One thing was certain: I'd find out soon. Pulling into my driveway, I took a deep breath to calm my racing thoughts and set to work. The aroma of the dinner I'd prepared filled the house, offering a temporary distraction from my swirling thoughts. I glanced at the clock. 7:45. Nicole was usually punctual. Maybe her work held her up. I tried to reassure myself, but a nagging feeling lingered. Sitting in our dimly lit dining room, the table set for two, I occasionally checked my phone, hoping for a call or a message from Nicole. The house remained quiet, except for the soft ticking of the wall clock. Each passing moment heightened the mystery of Nicole's plans. Finally, around 8:30, my phone rang, and I recognized Nicole's ringtone. I answered quickly. "Hey!" Nicole's voice came through, rushed and slightly breathless. "Hey, babe, where are you?" I asked, masking my concern. "I'm so sorry, Robert," she replied hurriedly. "An unexpected business trip came up and I couldn't turn it down. My boss insisted." I tried to digest the news. "Oh, okay. But can't you leave in the morning or something?" "I'm actually already on my way there." She sighed and added, "It's a significant opportunity. You could open some doors for me." I took a deep breath. I wanted to be understanding, especially considering my recent setbacks. "I understand. I wish you had told me sooner, though." I know, Nicole replied, the rush in her voice evident. "Everything happened so fast. I really have to go, Robert." I looked at the beautifully set table and the dinner I'd prepared. "All right, take care, Nicole. Call me when you can." Nicole's voice softened. "Okay, I will. I'll be back soon. Bye. And by the way, I don't know how long it's gonna last. Maybe like 2 weeks or so." As the call ended, I sank into a chair, my shoulders slumping under the weight of the evening's turn of events. I struggled to piece together the puzzle of my thoughts. The unexpected business trip seemed plausible, but the earlier wine purchase kept bothering me. Maybe she simply wanted to unwind during her trip and didn't mention it. I tried to rationalize, attempting to push aside the cloud of doubt forming in my mind. I took a deep breath, urging myself to focus on the present. Right in front of me was a delicious meal, and I was reluctant to let it go to waste. With renewed determination, I served myself some food and moved to the living room. The soft glow of the TV filled the room as I switched it on. The familiar sounds of a game in progress greeted me. I decided to immerse myself in it, temporarily pushing aside my concerns. Sometimes, a little distraction was all I needed to find clarity. I relaxed on the couch, thoroughly enjoying the game's excitement. An occasional chuckle escaped my lips, indicating my genuine amusement. When my glass ran dry, I strolled to the kitchen for a refill. The evening's anxieties began to fade, replaced by a warmer, lighter feeling. As I passed the study, an unexpected light caught my eye. The computer screen was illuminated, something that typically happened when notifications came in or if it was disturbed. Curiosity got the better of me, and I stepped into the study, switching on the overhead light. I mused to myself that maybe someone had left the computer on after having one too many drinks. But just as I was about to leave, another noise from the computer halted me in my tracks. A small pop-up in the screen's lower corner grabbed my attention, displaying the message, "Photos successfully synced." With raised eyebrows, I approached the computer and clicked on the notification. The screen showed the loading icon for a moment before revealing a list of files, all time-stamped from just hours ago. Tentatively, I opened one of the files, and the image started loading from top to bottom, gradually revealing a familiar face. As the image continued to load, Nicole's smiling face appeared, and her surroundings became clearer. By the time the image fully rendered, my heart sank. There she was, my wife, playfully taking a selfie while sitting on her boss's lap. The realization weighed heavily on me, and I slumped into a nearby chair, holding my head in my hands. All the doubts and suspicions that I had pushed aside came rushing back, now confirmed by the undeniable truth on the screen. The room seemed to close in on me as I stared at the image. The playful glint in Nicole's eyes, the familiarity with which she leaned into her boss. It all painted a story that I didn't want to believe. The wine I had consumed churned uneasily in my stomach. I returned to the list of files, clicking on another one. A sequence of photos revealed Nicole and her boss at a fancy bar. In some pictures, they were laughing and toasting with their glasses. In others, they were engaged in deep conversation, their faces close together. With each image, the reality of the situation became more evident. The evening's attempts to rekindle our relationship, the dinner I had prepared with care, it all seemed to taunt me now. A confusing mix of anger, pain, and betrayal flooded me, and most of all, I felt an overpowering sense of loss. I got up and returned to the living room, no longer interested in the wine I held. I was now looking for something stronger. With a light drizzle outside, I put on my coat and headed out. Slowly, I made my way to the liquor store. As I walked, my heart ached with pain. I could feel myself shattering into numerous pieces. Memories of the joyful times I shared with Nicole replayed in my mind, but now they were tinged with sadness. The question, why, echoed repeatedly. Why did Nicole grow distant? Was it because I had failed as a provider? I remembered the times when my business was thriving, when we both had big dreams. I had once enthusiastically promised Nicole the latest Mercedes, a symbol of success and luxury, but I never followed through on that promise. Could that unkept promise be a part of why she distanced herself? Or was it something more? It was hard to pinpoint one reason. Perhaps it was a combination of many small things, overlooked moments, and unspoken emotions. All I knew for certain was that our relationship had changed, leaving me with a profound sense of loss and confusion. I entered the store, rainwater dripping from my face and soaking my coat. Pam, upon recognizing me, noticed the fading smile on my face and paused for a moment, searching for the right word. "Hey, Robert," she began gently. "Having a tough day?" My voice was low, almost a whisper. "Whiskey, please." Pam, perceptive as always, sensed that something was amiss. "Are you sure about that? If you need someone to talk to." But I simply shook my head, interrupting her. "Just the whiskey, thanks." I took the bottle, offered a brief, wary smile, and left the store. I didn't wait until I got home to open the whiskey. After a few swallows, the world began to spin. The drink heightened my emotions, breaking down my usual defenses. Stumbling a bit, I began speaking louder to strangers passing by. "Hey there," I slurred, pointing at no one in particular. "Do you know my wife? She's off somewhere having the time of her life with her boss, and here I am, celebrating." I laughed bitterly, my words dripping with sarcasm. "Yep, a one-man party. That's me." As time passed, my speech became increasingly incoherent. I began to sing fragments of a song that had played in my home earlier, the same song meant to accompany a romantic dinner for two. My voice wavered, sometimes staying on key, other times going entirely off tune. The sadness in my rendition was palpable, the melody mirroring my broken heart. Stumbling along the sidewalk, I realized I had lost my whiskey bottle. Thinking I had finished it, I decided to return to the store for another. As I swayed and muttered to myself, I reached into my pocket for money, but it was nowhere to be found. It was then that I noticed an older man nearby, watching me with a mix of concern and curiosity. I raised my voice, and my words slurred together as I confronted the old man, asking if he had something to say. The elderly man, wearing glasses and carrying a worn-out backpack, appeared surprised by my aggression at first. However, my tone quickly shifted from confrontational to desperate. I apologized to him, my voice breaking, and explained that I really needed a drink right now. I asked if he could spare $20. The old man sighed and reached into his pockets, pulling out a few crumpled dollar bills from his shirt pocket. He told me it was all he had, and extended the money to me. Still unsteady on my feet, I accepted the money and mumbled my thanks. Then I suggested that he join me for a drink, but the old man gently declined, expressing concern that I had already had enough. I was about to respond defiantly when my stomach turned, and I vomited onto the pavement. The mist had soaked everything around, and the cold was settling in. I, wet and disoriented, leaned against a brick wall with my eyes closed, trying to catch my breath. The old man observed with a furrowed brow, expressing worry. He prodded gently, asking if I lived nearby. In my hardly coherent state, I simply murmured that I wanted to sleep. Surveying the nearly deserted street with the dim light from a nearby lamppost casting long shadows on the wet pavement, the old man expressed concern that it wasn't a suitable place to sleep, especially in such weather conditions. He mustered his strength and helped me to my feet, taking most of my weight. Encouraging me, the old man led me toward a nearby bridge. Below the bridge, hidden from the rain and prying eyes, was a small makeshift shelter that served as the old man's temporary home. It was constructed from discarded materials and tarps, offering limited comfort, but at least being dry and relatively warm. I stirred awake, the soft chirping of morning birds filling my ears. My surroundings seemed unfamiliar, a murky haze blurring my vision. My skull throbbed with pain from the previous night's excesses. I winced as I tried to make sense of where I was. The dim light revealed a simple wooden shelter. With a groan, I pushed back the curtain and stepped outside, attempting to orient myself. Next to a gentle river, an elderly man sat calmly, casting his fishing line. His posture remained relaxed, and his hands displayed steadiness, despite the evident marks of time on his skin. The cautiously approaching man greeted me with a knowing smile, and remarked that it took me a while to wake up, and that we had a bit too much fun the previous night. Momentarily taken aback by the man's warmth, I stammered, expressing my lack of memory regarding how I ended up there. The man, named Jim Hughes, chuckled and explained that I had consumed too much alcohol the night before, leading to me passing out on the pavement. He mentioned that it didn't feel right to leave me there, so he brought me to this place. My cheeks reddened with embarrassment, and I thanked Jim while expressing my hope that I hadn't caused any trouble. Jim leaned back, and the sun reflected off his aged eyes as he admitted that I had been a bit loud, particularly in my shouts about my wife. Feeling the weight of the previous night's events, I apologized and explained that I had been going through a tough time lately. Jim's gaze softened, and he offered comforting words, mentioning that he had been in a similar situation, experiencing grief and feeling lost. He shared some wisdom, stating that pain has its own way of healing and that time can help. Jim suggested having breakfast for the moment. Without hesitation, I blurted out a request for something to drink, citing the splitting headache I was experiencing. Jim chuckled, showing he had already anticipated this, and soon the delightful aroma of simmering fish soup filled the air. I watched as Jim skillfully prepared the meal, and I couldn't help but express how heavenly it smelled. Jim replied with a wink, attributing it to an old family recipe perfect for mornings like these. As we enjoyed the warmth and flavor of the fish soup under the open sky, Jim took a moment to offer me some advice. I sighed and expressed my understanding of the need to avoid letting alcohol control one's life. Jim looked at me, his gaze pausing for a moment, and shared his perspective, mentioning that life is complex, and that sometimes it's best to let go and move on, particularly if someone has wronged you. I sensed a touch of sadness in his eyes, but refrained from delving further into the subject. Instead, I thanked Jim for everything, and mentioned my intention to head home. As I prepared to leave, I noticed some intricately carved wooden figures and objects outside the shack. Impressed, I asked if Jim had made them. Jim's eyes sparkled as he confirmed that he had crafted them, explaining that they were a piece of his past life that he still held on to, and that woodworking brought him peace. I expressed my admiration, complimenting his talent. A smile blossomed on my face as I continued my journey home, hinting at newfound hope and a fresh start. Upon arriving home, I rushed to my computer and became determined to reach out to local furniture stores in the following days, pitching my ideas with enthusiasm. 1 week later, filled with hope and determination, I retraced my steps to Jim's riverside shack. I expected to find the elderly man there, but only Jim's backpack and jacket lay near the dwelling, as if he had just stepped away. Confusion clouded my thoughts. Where could Jim be? I scanned the surroundings, but the old man was nowhere in sight. Maybe he's out fishing or gathering wood, I thought, considering coming back the next day. As I started my journey back, a small, sharp stone found its way into my shoe. Each step grew increasingly uncomfortable, like an incessant itch I couldn't scratch. I let out a sigh of irritation and found a flat spot to sit down, eager to remove the annoying intruder. However, as I lifted my shoe, my eyes darted past it to a lone figure standing perilously close to the edge of the bridge. In the distance, panic gripped me. The scene looked all too familiar. Without a second thought, I quickly put my shoe back on, not even bothering to tie the laces. I shouted with desperation as I saw the person too close to the edge of the bridge, fearing the worst. I hoped that with each rapid step, I could reach them in time, praying they would hear me and step back to safety. My feet thudded against the wooden planks of the bridge, and as I got closer, Jim's figure became clearer. Initially relieved to find my friend, my smile disappeared when I noticed a coiled rope on the ground next to Jim, replacing my relief with gut-wrenching fear. Jim's eyes, filled with pain and unshed tears, met mine, conveying the despair that words couldn't express. Without hesitation, I approached Jim with slow and deliberate movements, careful not to startle him. I reached out and put an arm securely around his shoulders. We stood there together, two souls on that bridge, sharing a moment of raw vulnerability. I tightened my grip, feeling Jim's body tremble. As Jim's tears finally flowed, I pulled him into a tight embrace, the weight of the moment pressing down on us both. "It's okay," I murmured softly into Jim's ear, my voice steady and reassuring. "I'm here. We'll face this together." Sitting side by side on the bridge, Jim slowly began to share his story with me, unraveling the threads of his life step by step. He began by mentioning his service to the country and his job at a food processing plant, emphasizing that it may not have been glamorous, but it was honest labor. Jim's voice carried a weary tone as he recounted his journey, mentioning that he had secured a small apartment and had done everything he could to provide for his daughter, who meant the world to him. The weight of his memories was palpable as he rubbed his forehead. He continued, explaining that he lost his job when the plant downsized and missed a rent payment, leading to his eviction just a week later. Jim expressed how he had felt like he had nothing and no safety net. With pain etched in his eyes, Jim continued his story, describing how it had felt like every door was closing on him. He mentioned returning to his hometown with the hope of better luck, but faced difficulties due to his lack of a permanent address. Even job interviews ended in rejection because of his history of job loss. Jim looked down and fidgeted with his hands, conveying his anguish as he recounted how he was picked up for sleeping in places he shouldn't have been and fell seriously ill. He shared the scarcity of assistance and how he eventually found refuge in a friend's van, which was temporary. He mentioned stumbling upon the shack by the bridge, which had become his makeshift home. He let out a heavy sigh, expressing that the most painful part had been knowing his daughter was out there, thinking her father had abandoned her. Jim had been deeply despondent, feeling lost, and without any hope for a brighter future. He had reached the bridge in a state of despair. My heart unexpectedly went out to Jim. This elderly man, with his gentle demeanor and genuine smile, stirred a protective instinct within me. As we walked back to the shack together, I spoke with genuine warmth, telling Jim that life had thrown some hard punches his way, but he was not alone in this battle anymore. Jim's eyes glistened with a mix of gratitude and astonishment, and my mind raced with possibilities. I had a vision, and Jim possessed the skills. So, I proposed to Jim the idea of partnering with me in starting a small furniture business, possibly beginning with crafting cradles. Jim looked taken aback by the unexpected proposal, but slowly, a glimmer of hope began to shine in his eyes, a light that had been missing for a long time. He asked hesitantly if I would trust him with that endeavor, to which I replied confidently that I wouldn't have offered if I didn't. Over the following 2 weeks, the garage at my house echoed with the sounds of sawing, hammering, and laughter as we skillfully crafted exquisite wooden cradles. Each piece carried a story of hope and fresh beginnings. Jim became more than just a guest in my home. We shared meals, stories, and dreams, becoming like family with each passing day. I loaded the beautifully crafted wooden cradles into my truck and headed to the local furniture stores. The cradles immediately caught the attention of store owners with their intricate designs and expert craftsmanship. When one store owner inquired about the craftsman, I proudly told them about my friend Jim, emphasizing his remarkable talent. It didn't take long for the cradles to gain popularity. Customers appreciated their uniqueness and the exceptional craftsmanship that went into each piece. Word spread, and soon more and more stores were reaching out to me and Jim with orders. One day, my smartphone displayed my wife Nicole's name, filling me with anticipation and memories. In a brief conversation, Nicole mentioned a delay and the possibility of an extended trip abroad. When I inquired about what was going on, there was a moment of silence, followed by Nicole clearing her throat. She then explained her urgent need for a loan. Hesitating due to our history and the abruptness of her request, I eventually conveyed my inability, explaining, "Nicole, I'm sorry, but I can't do that right now." Her irritation was audible, and she sighed and responded sharply with a "fine" and "forget it," before abruptly ending the call. Jim and my collaboration had taken off, and the demand for our finely crafted cradles was on the rise. Our small workspace was quickly becoming inadequate to handle the expanding business. As time passed, it became evident that we needed more space to accommodate our growing enterprise. I recalled a conversation with my friend Mark, who mentioned owning an old barn just outside of town. It was spacious, sturdy, and had been vacant for years. The transition to the barn went smoothly, and we hired a couple of eager local workers who were enthusiastic about learning the craft and becoming part of our growing success. I began to oversee operations more frequently from my home office. One evening, after a long day at the barn, Jim returned home to a pleasant surprise. Upon entering the house, he found me bustling around in the kitchen, which was an unusual sight. Typically, we would share a simple dinner with the rest of the crew back at the barn before calling it a day. However, this evening was different. The table was neatly set, and the delicious aroma filled the air. Seeing Jim standing there, somewhat perplexed, I motioned for him to take a seat at the table. "Please sit down, Jim. Dinner will be ready shortly," I said with a friendly smile. Jim, though confused, complied and took a seat, observing me as I moved about the kitchen with determination. Eventually, I joined him at the table, removing my apron, and my face lit up with a wide grin, piquing Jim's curiosity. "I hope you won't be upset, Jim," I began, my eyes gleaming with an indescribable emotion. Before Jim could inquire further, the doorbell rang. I quickly answered it, and a moment later, a young girl hesitantly entered the room, her eyes filled with curiosity as she took in the unfamiliar surroundings. A woman followed closely behind. Jim's face shifted from pale to flushed with emotion as he recognized his daughter, Mindy. He rose from his seat, stumbling slightly as he rushed towards her. They embraced tightly, their emotions needing no words to convey their feelings. Behind them, I stood with the young girl, Kristen, smiling warmly at the heartwarming reunion. Mindy's voice quivered as she spoke amidst tears, expressing, "I thought I'd never see you again, Dad." Jim choked out with a trembling voice, "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have reached out." In a soft tone, Mindy said, "You should have, Dad, but it's okay now," as she stroked her father's hair. Jim nodded, clinging to his daughter as if she would vanish if he let go. He then looked at Kristen and then at Mindy, slightly confused. Mindy laughed and informed him, "Yes, that's Kristen." Jim gazed at his granddaughter, a lovely little girl he had only seen as an infant in pictures. I clapped my hands, gently drawing their attention, and informed them, "Well, everyone, dinner is ready. Please come to the table." As they gathered around the table, Mindy shared her struggles of the past month. Her obsession with finding her father had strained her relationship with her husband, ultimately leading to their separation. It had been a challenging journey, but at that moment, with her father by her side and new friends around, Mindy felt a sense of peace and closure she hadn't experienced in a long time. The warmth and laughter in my home multiplied with Mindy and Kristen's presence. They added a delightful energy that I recognized was healing for me. I invited them to stay, knowing how much it would help my friend rebuild the lost bond. One evening, while engrossed in paperwork in my home office, the main door squeaked open. It wasn't Jim or Mindy, and I knew this because they always announced their return cheerfully. Glancing out, I saw Nicole. She appeared weary, with slumped shoulders and dark circles under her eyes. She sighed, dropped her bags, and stretched. That trip was quite an experience. I watched her silently, a furrow forming on my forehead. She walked past me and slumped on the living room sofa, every move reflecting her exhaustion. Taking a deep breath, I approached her. I hesitated for a moment before sitting beside her, maintaining a bit of distance. Nicole glanced at me, trying to gauge my feelings. "Look, Robert, I know things have been complicated, but—" I raised a hand, interrupting her. "Did you have your phone sync turned on?" I asked, my voice low. Nicole looked puzzled, but realization soon crossed her face, her eyes widening in shock. I swallowed hard, holding back my emotions. "I saw the pictures, Nicole. I didn't need to see more than a few to understand." She moved closer, desperation in her eyes. "Robert, please listen. It's not how it seems. We were just—" I stood up abruptly, cutting her off. "I wish I hadn't seen those photos, Nicole. But now that I have, things can never be the same. I won't pretend everything's okay." Nicole's voice trembled as she pleaded, "Robert, just give me a chance to explain." I shook my head. "I think it's best if you leave. Please." Nicole's tone escalated, her frustration evident. "So this is it? You won't even hear me out? Fine, leave. But just remember, no one will ever stand by you the way I did. No one will love you like I did." The sound of the front door creaking open interrupted the tension in the room. Jim, having just entered, froze. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he decided to give them some privacy and quietly retreated, gently closing the door behind him. Nicole's demeanor shifted as her attempts to assert herself failed. She appeared genuinely remorseful. "Robert, I'm truly sorry," she whispered. While I acknowledged her apology, I firmly requested that she leave. As Nicole exited, a cheerful Kristen was playing on the lawn. She spotted me and rushed over, hugging my legs tightly. The innocent embrace seemed to emphasize the contrast between the past and a potential future. Nicole watched, taking in the scene. A pang of realization struck her. Perhaps someone else would indeed offer me the love and respect I deserved, something she had been unable to provide.
I'm in my 50s and have never been married. In fact, I've never even been close to getting married. However, I do have two men in my life who are very dear to me. They are my nephews by marriage. It feels a bit embarrassing to share this, but here's my story. I've been running a daycare for quite some time, located in an apartment complex. Ever since I was young, I've had a special fondness for children. I grew up as the youngest of 3 sisters, with more than a decade separating me from my siblings. I vividly recall when my eldest sister brought her newborn to our home for postpartum care. Right after school, I'd rush home, excited to see my niece or nephew, learning how to change diapers and feed them formula from my sister. Interestingly, the baby would cry more when held by my brother-in-law, but would stop crying when I took over. This experience inspired me to pursue a degree in early childhood education. The courses were fascinating, and I thoroughly enjoyed my internship. During my senior year, I even worked part-time at a daycare during the holidays. After graduating, I earned my certification and started working in daycare. I found immense joy in caring for these adorable toddlers, who had just begun to speak, calling me teacher. My passion solidified my belief that I was meant to spend my life caring for children, my family, who always saw me as the carefree youngest child, was amazed that I had chosen to dedicate my life to teaching at a daycare. Approaching his 70s, my father offered to help me start my own daycare, and we found the perfect location in the administrative office of the apartment complex they were moving to. Given the complex housed over 1,000 units, our daycare quickly became popular. Despite being relatively young, I had significant experience and a profound love for children, which drove me to pour my heart and soul into running the daycare. We managed to offer high-quality educational materials at a lower cost than other private daycares. Dealing with people wasn't always easy, but the joy of being around cheerful children every day made it all worthwhile. My sincerity seemed to resonate well, as our daycare enjoyed great popularity, even receiving positive mentions on local online forums. In the midst of my busy life, I met a man. He was my first in many ways, my first boyfriend, my first trip away together, and the first to confess his love to me. Our time together built up a treasure trove of memories, and naturally, marriage came up in our conversations. We even started looking for a 3-bedroom apartment, as I had always dreamed of having my own room even after marriage. I was discussing redecorating our home office and walk-in closet with my partner when he looked at me incredulously. "Why would newlyweds need separate rooms?" he asked. I told him I wanted my own space. But then he brought up his mother. "What about my mom then?" Confused, I asked. "Your mother?" he explained. "Yeah, my mom said not to worry about household chores. She'll cook, clean, and do the laundry. She even offered to help us with some of the lease, suggesting we all live together. And since she has bad knees, it would be best if she took the master bedroom for easier access to the bathroom. You got that?" It turned out my boyfriend and his mother had already planned everything without consulting me. His reasoning was that since I liked kids, he assumed I'd be great at taking care of adults too. I was speechless. How could I marry someone who informs rather than discusses? Right then and there, I broke up with him. My ex-boyfriend and his mother only approached me because I had a stable job as a kindergarten principal. It was my first relationship, and I was genuinely excited. But this experience made me lose trust in men and decide to remain single. Occasionally, I developed crushes on the fathers of my students during consultations, but I always held back my feelings, fearing it might disrupt my commitment to staying single. Eventually, I reached my 50s, realizing even if I wanted to, I couldn't have children anymore. My nieces, living in the same neighborhood, both had daughters, who ended up living in my apartment complex. They were exhausted from taking care of their children, but their husbands were easygoing and healthy. One weekend, when my niece left her child with me, she apologized for making me look after her baby too. Taking care of the child was no trouble at all for me, so I happily obliged. In the evening, a son-in-law, whom I'd occasionally greeted, came to pick up the child but ended up staying for beer and chicken while watching a variety show as the child had fallen asleep. It was a pleasant evening, and I got slightly drunk. When I woke up, I found the son-in-law lying next to me, and for a moment, he reminded me of a man I met in my 20s. Overwhelmed by his compliment on my looks and suggesting I could still find a partner, I suddenly felt emotional. I hinted to my nephew-in-law that it was okay for him to stay longer. Pulling out his phone, he said, "The baby fell asleep early. I'll hang out here watching tea with you and head back slowly." Let's have some more fun. We ended up spending the night together until dawn, thanks to my nephew-in-law making time. Thankfully, the little one slept through much of it. My niece was so grateful for the chance to hang out with her friends, without worry that she gifted me a box of fruit. After that day, my nephew-in-law started visiting me every weekend, and my niece began catching up with friends she hadn't seen in a while. My older sister's son-in-law and I got along incredibly well. He's tall and quite athletic, and he finds it amazing that I accept him as he is. My older niece and her husband went on a trip abroad for their wedding anniversary, and my younger niece wanted to leave her child with me because she felt more at ease. She had taken golf lessons and was going to play on the field for the first time. Naturally, I agreed to take care of the child, and my younger niece left for her early morning round. The grandchild was so gentle and beautiful. Even though I don't have children of my own, looking after these kids daily makes me feel young, and I've grown fond of this job. My niece called to say she would be a bit late, and the son-in-law came to pick up the child after his morning soccer game. He brought a pizza to share, feeling sorry, and we had a lovely chat. He had a different vibe from my older sister's son-in-law, perhaps more in tune with a woman's heart, with his quiet demeanor and gentle way of speaking. We discovered we shared a hobby. While he likes soccer, he also enjoys playing badminton. We agreed to play badminton in the apartment gym, and it became a regular weekend activity. Despite his slim appearance, he was quick and athletic. Our badminton games became a regular meetup. We even had group dinners with other club members and decided to go on a workshop with those we got. Along with about 6 of us, went to a nearby resort. I was the only woman in the group, the rest being older gentlemen. I booked a smaller place for myself. The members, having played badminton for a long time, were all fit and lean. We had dinner and then drinks with those we were close to, including my nephew-in-law and another gentleman. Having my nephew-in-law there was somewhat reassuring. The badminton members, all successful business owners, eventually went back to their rooms. Left alone with my nephew-in-law, we decided to have another drink in my room. My younger sister's son-in-law then hinted at a secret, revealing he felt incredibly lonely after having a child. Realizing the situation, I ended up spending the night in the same room with him. To have met not just one, but 2 young nephews-in-law feels like receiving blessings late in life. Teachers have started saying I look tired or younger, making me wonder if they've noticed anything, leaving me feeling a bit bashful.
I caught my wife cheating with her boss, recorded everything in HD, and exposed her to everyone. The most painful thing was watching my wife prepare for an evening with her boss, Mark Diamond. She wore desirable clothes, spent a lot of time on makeup and hair, and put on a dress and high heels I had never seen. I felt betrayed, jealous, and angry. She did all this for Mark, not me, while I worked hard to provide for our family. It was confusing. Our bed life was great, and Jessica was always attentive and open. After 20 years of marriage, I trusted her. Except for that one night a month ago at her company's dinner, when Mark paid too much attention to her. There was a smirk when he looked at me after dancing with my wife, giving me a hint. For some reason, a bad feeling bothered me, and it got worse when I told Jessica the next day. Her defense of Mark confirmed my suspicions. Late meetings and missed lunches suddenly became a red flag that I needed to address immediately. The more I thought, the angrier I became. Jessica is Mark's personal assistant, and Mark is the managing partner of a prestigious law firm. He loves flaunting his success with expensive cars, jewelry, and his young trophy wife, Stella. She was a 30-year-old, extremely desirable girl he exchanged for his ex-wife of 20 years. Mark likes making jokes at other people's expense, and I remember him making fun of my work on one of our walks. I sell screws and fasteners to large retail stores. It's not a glamorous job, but I made over $200,000 a year, providing a good living for my family. I gave Jessica everything she wanted and paid for our daughter Sarah's college education. She was now in her second year. We live in a pleasant community with good friends and a comfortable lifestyle. I wasn't a power broker and didn't make $1 million a year like Mark, but we were happy, or so I thought. The night he ridiculed my work in front of my wife and others stirred my anger. It wasn't just his arrogance that bothered me, but also the fact that my wife defended him after he humiliated me regarding the question about my work at Home Depot. He asked, "So, Johnny, how's it going with the nuts and bolts? It must be fun working at Home Depot every day." Upon witnessing Jessica's laughter, my blood boiled, prompting my silent departure. To her credit, Jessica approached me and inquired about the issue. Upon explaining, she attempted to downplay it. She remarked, "Oh baby, he's just kidding. He loves to have fun. You shouldn't take everything so personally. Come with me. He's a really good guy." Against my better judgment, I stayed at dinner. Looking back, I realize I should have seen the signs, but now I may have missed some red flags. I'm not a fool, and I wouldn't sit quietly. I can understand why people are attracted to Mark. He's the alpha, the big, strong, good-looking man, the wealthy partner everyone wants to be around. Jessica was his closest ally at the firm. Everything was going well. Despite his younger, handsome wife, for Mark, he wanted it all, including someone else's wife. Over the next week, I acted quickly to find out if I was crazy or if my intuition was correct. After 6 audio recording devices and 5 video cameras arrived, I began to implement my plan. The first camera went in the smoke detector in our bedroom. The next 2 captured different angles of the bedroom. The rest went in the master bath and living room. All cameras had live streaming and up to 8K recording, connecting wirelessly to a computer in the attic, controlled remotely via a phone app. The audio devices were unique, one in a pen next to the kitchen phone and the other discreetly in her car. Standard recording devices went in her 3 favorite purses and one behind our bed. With this setup, I should capture at least 90% of her conversations and activities in the house. I felt a sense of foreboding about the upcoming week as I prepared for a business trip. Jessica, as usual, showered me with love and made our time in bed unforgettable. Whenever I went on a trip, she would begin with lots of kisses and sweet talk, expressing her love and desire for me. Her closeness and love were something I cherished, and she never disappointed. She expressed, "I love you so much, and I love making love to you, honey." With tears in her eyes, she looked at me with a smile and said, "I love you too, baby. You are amazing, and I will love you forever." It was an incredible night, and I felt so close and in love with this woman that I was convinced she couldn't be unfaithful. I almost abandoned my plan to spy on her, but thankfully I left everything as it was and embarked on my 2-night trip. This week I wanted to give her enough time in case something happened. We kissed goodbye, and by 6 p.m. I was on my way for the 3-hour drive to the hotel. The trip gave me time to reflect on the last 6 months of trying to find something else to do. Apart from 2 incidents with her boss, that smirk and his attempt to humiliate me, nothing changed. I smiled when I realized I was being foolish and paranoid. When I finally arrived at the hotel, I checked into my room, turned on my laptop, and relaxed on the king-size bed. It took a few minutes, and I checked my email for any work messages. Then I clicked on the link to the server in my attic to view the last 3 hours. I knew there wouldn't be much to see, but I needed to test the remote access system. I played the video at 3 times the speed until I saw my wife in the bedroom, then returned it to normal speed to enjoy watching my beautiful, desirable wife making a phone call. What I didn't expect was the phone conversation with Mark an hour after I left. The video camera captured the audio. As I watched her lying on the bed talking to her boss, I could only hear her part of the conversation. As I watched and listened to the videotape, she mentioned that I had left and she was all alone. She confirmed it would be 2 nights this time. They discussed when he could come, considering the risk of his wife asking about his whereabouts. She expressed excitement about the prospect and agreed to spend the night with him, expressing her desire to wake up next to him. After arranging the details, she reassured him that she was all his, and they exchanged words of affection. As I sat there in shock, I couldn't comprehend how we had just made passionate love, and now, an hour later, she was inviting him to spend the night. It left me questioning who this woman truly was. How could she profess love to me and betray me moments later? The unsettling question lingered, is he coming tonight? For the next hour, I watched my loving wife prepare to meet her lover. Watching her shower, put on desirable lingerie, high heels, and makeup after spending 30 minutes fixing her hair was both painful and erotic. I always knew she was a passionate being, but she never dressed like that for me. Anger and jealousy consumed me as I realized she was doing it all for Mark, not her faithful husband. It was hard to believe. The question of whether Mark would come over tonight was soon answered when the doorbell rang. I observed Mark walking into my house and sharing a deep kiss with Jessica in real time as captured by the video camera. I took a close-up of their kiss, an image that caused me to vomit for the first time that night. He complimented Jessica, remarking, "Wow, baby, you look amazing in that dress. I can't wait to rip it off your desirable body and make love to you all night long," with a wide smile directed at her. While their exchange fueled my anger, it transformed into unbearable pain when I witnessed her taking his hand and leading him into our bedroom. The pain intensified as I watched her undress him, revealing a man with a robust physique and six-pack abs. As I observed this scene, a mixture of jealousy, rage, and anger consumed me, yet a peculiar sense of admiration for their audacity emerged. After the second bout of vomiting, I endured listening to them engage in personal activities for the next hour. Realizing my marriage was over, I acknowledged that I shouldn't have allowed it to bother me, but their conversation proved to be the most painful part of the night. As they lay together, he initiated a dialogue. He mentioned my absence, noting, "Your husband is away for a few nights, making you all mine for the next 2 days." She responded with enthusiasm, expressing her thrill that he could stay the night and how she had wanted to wake up next to him for so long. She confirmed her affection, stating that she loved being with him. He continued with anticipation, expressing his excitement about having her over and over again all night while her husband worked hard. In a moment of self-awareness, she remarked on the situation, calling it foolish. She reminded him to behave, stating that she loved her husband and he was a good person. He questioned their affair, asking why she let him have closeness with her. He mentioned that they were both married and they should just enjoy the time they had together. She agreed, saying it made sense. He confessed his feelings, stating that she gave him more love and affection than his wife or any other woman he had been with. For him, it was more than just closeness. He loved the way she made him feel, Jessica. This revelation caused deep hurt, as the love he spoke of was supposed to be exclusively for me. I continued to witness their interactions as they hugged, kissed, and talked. In another exchange, Mark asked if her husband satisfied her as much as he did. He acknowledged that her husband was a wonderful lover but claimed that he was not like her. He asserted that she did things to him that he couldn't explain. Overwhelmed with sadness, hurt, and a profound sense of loss, I turned off the computer, unable to endure this betrayal in my own home, in my own bed. I decided to stop listening. After grappling with anger for several hours and experiencing insomnia, I came to the realization that a future filled with pain and the pursuit of revenge awaited me. Upon returning home, everything appeared normal, filled with love and respect as if nothing had transpired. Jessica greeted me with a big hug and lots of kisses, acting as though nothing had occurred during my absence. However, the love I had always felt for her had transformed into disgust, causing me to shudder at her kiss. Despite my inner turmoil, I played the role of an actor convincingly, striving to appear as normal as possible. I gathered all the recordings and videos, creating copies in the cloud for backup, and crafted an encrypted file on my computer. Over the next 2 weeks, I ensured that every moment Jessica spent with me was purposeful. I kept her busy, deliberately preventing any opportunity for quickies or late-night encounters. She even inquired about my next trip, a clear indication that they desired my absence. One morning, while she was driving to work, I overheard their conversation. "When will your husband leave town again?" "I'm not sure, but I'll find out." "It's got to happen soon, baby." Aware of their intentions, I strategically planned a one-night trip to ensure he would come while I was away. The plan started taking shape that same evening. As I watched a movie on TV, my cheating wife asked, "Darling, when is your next trip?" Attempting to control my anger, I responded in a joking voice, "Honey, are you trying to get rid of me? Do you have a secret lover who comes when I'm not there?" She maintained her composure, showing no signs of guilt. "Do not be silly. I like it when you're home. I hope you don't have to leave, and I'm wondering if your travel has been cut back." "No, sorry, honey. My job still requires me to travel." "Yes, I have an evening appointment next Tuesday, and I'll be back sometime on Wednesday," I said in a convincing tone. "I hate it when you leave. I wish you didn't have to. Or travel like that. I miss you so much when you're gone." She then came over, hugged me, kissed me deeply, and made me feel more loved than I can explain. Upon realizing that she was giving the same love to another man, I felt an intense urge to scream and throw her to the floor. However, I maintained my composure and continued to work as usual, knowing that my plan would be put into action the following week. On Tuesday, I packed up for the trip, and Jessica and I had our last session of lovemaking. She kissed me wonderfully before I left that night, and I wondered if she had seen the sadness in my eyes when I looked at her one last time. I noticed her expression change, but I wasn't sure what she was thinking. Instead of leaving town, I returned to my office and parked my car. I then went back to my desk to work late, which was not unusual, and the few people who were there never questioned my arrival. At approximately 7:30, the video camera turned on as Mark entered my house and tenderly kissed my soon-to-be ex-wife. Again, it was showtime. I used a phone app to turn off the video camera, stashed my cell phone in a drawer to avoid GPS tracking, and quietly left the office. I grabbed my folding electric bike from the car trunk. The electric motor allowed speeds up to 30 miles per hour, covering 50 miles on a single charge. Wearing a black hoodie, I made sure no one noticed and silently biked the 12-mile journey back home. The idea behind the bike was stealth, enabling me to return home quietly and unnoticed. Within 20 minutes, I parked the bike behind the house, entered through the open back sliding door I had left, and stood quietly to ensure I wasn't discovered. Listening for sounds from the bedroom, I confirmed they were occupied, and my arrival wasn't known. I fetched a short-barreled rifle and an aluminum bat from the closet, placing the rifle outside the bedroom and holding the bat. Quietly opening the door to the candlelit room, their noise covered my approach. Without hesitation, I walked to the bed and delivered a strong blow to the side of his head. The dull thud of metal hitting flesh was overshadowed by the 250-pound man hitting the floor. Grabbing the rifle and turning on the light, Jessica realized what was happening. She looked stunned and in shock. She screamed, "Oh God, no, please no, this can't be true. Why are you here? You should be away." "Why are you with another man in my bed? That's a better question. Now shut up and pay attention." The big man, semi-conscious, sat against the wall with blood dripping from a 6-inch wound caused by the metal bat. Watching him regain consciousness, I pointed the rifle at him. "Damn it, this hurts. Why did you do that?" "Dude, are you kidding? You have closeness with my wife in my bed and you think I won't react? What are you going to do?" He nervously looked at the rifle I was pointing. "Are you worried, big man? Are you afraid I will hurt you? I know what you two did behind my back, and today is payback. I'm going to do away with you, Mark. Tonight you will die." Teasingly, I continued, "Everything you worked for will disappear. I hope it was worth it, prick." "Dude, you do away with me, you're going to jail for the rest of your life." "To hell with this. We will all die tonight." "How does that sound, idiot?" I wanted to put the fear of God into both of them, with no plans to actually kill them. Their fear excited me. Jessica was crying, curled up, trying to cover herself. "Baby, please don't do anything stupid. I love you. I really do. Put the rifle down and let's talk about this." With an evil grin, I pointed the rifle at her. "Shut up. This is because you wanted adventures outside of our marriage. Whatever happens tonight is all your work." They knew they were in trouble and had to calm me down, or I would hurt everyone. The rifle had custom-made loads with 25% salt and 75% capsicum oleoresin pepper spray. I aimed to cause pain, maybe damage, not to kill. Though I had no intention of going to jail, I wanted to seriously scare them, making the emotions last. After Big Mark recovered, he tried to rush at me and I unloaded the first round. The explosion was loud, his screams louder. A few minutes later, as he sat writhing in pain, bleeding, I explained the plan. Kicking him to get his attention, I looked at my soon-to-be ex-wife. "Listen to me, and you too, my cheating wife. I'll leave in a few minutes, and you take this loser to the emergency room before he bleeds out. You won't call the police. You'll take him to the hospital in your car. You won't tell anyone how this happened or that I was involved. If any of you say I was involved or knew about your infidelity, the collected video, audio, and photos will go public. Don't fire my ex-wife. She'll need her job after the divorce. If you come after me or she refuses the divorce proposal, everything comes out. Get him to the hospital before he bleeds, and remember what I said." I left the same way I came, fixing the lock and closing the door. I put the bat and rifle in a bag, slung it over my shoulder, and quietly left the area. I threw the bat and rifle into different parts of the river while riding my bike back to the office. I removed the surgical gloves and threw them away. Upon returning to the office, I stored my bike in the car and returned to my desk by 9 p.m. After that, I set off on my trip, bidding farewell to some CO workers burning the midnight oil. To everyone's knowledge, my car never left the parking lot, and I stayed at my desk all evening. Accusations would be their word against mine, with no proof if they ever pointed fingers. Mark had surgery. He had to shave his head for 18 stitches due to a concussion. According to his story, he last remembered walking home with paperwork to his personal assistant before ending up in the hospital. He told the police he couldn't recall seeing anyone or being assaulted. Choosing to stay silent, he was aware that I could destroy his life and career. Jessica was extremely upset and didn't utter a word about the incident. All she mentioned was hearing a shot. When she went outside, she found Mark lying there and rushed him to the hospital, thinking there wasn't time to wait for an ambulance. Neither could explain why he was undressed, and both stuck to their stories. Mark's wife doubted him, causing significant problems. I spent the afternoon removing surveillance equipment. uploading everything to an encrypted cloud server and tossing the equipment away. Any remaining evidence of their affair was now inaccessible in the cloud. Around 6 p.m., Jessica entered and found me in the living room with a bottle of my good whiskey. I sat quietly as she faced me on the couch. She looked shattered and sad. I had never seen her like this, and for a brief moment I felt sorry for her. With tears in her eyes, she couldn't bear it and tried to explain everything. "Johnny, what you witnessed was bad, but you need to know I wasn't in love with him. I know it seemed that way, and it must have hurt, but you know me. After closeness, I need connection. It was all for you, baby. When you left, I hated being alone, and Mark kept me company, and yes, it got passionate, but it was just closeness. You have to believe me." My mouth hung open in amazement at the incomprehensible excuse she made. "Jessica, I heard your explanations, and despite you saying those words of love were meant for me, I can't help but believe they were for Mark. It's over, Jessica. 20 wonderful years wasted because of your boss and your infidelity. We both have to live with your actions forever. Thanks for the pain and suffering you caused me. I'll always cherish it," I said sarcastically. "What do we do now?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "Well, we're finished. With you, I'll never understand how you did this to me or why. I'll have to live with it forever. There's no way I can forgive what you did, but I'll keep my promise and not expose your infidelity. Sarah and your parents will never know they have such a woman instead of a mother and daughter. You'll have to explain why we're getting a divorce, but I warn you, don't make me the villain. If you do, it will end badly because I'll make sure everyone knows you're nothing more than a cheating adulteress. I'm putting the house up for sale, and in the meantime, you need to find a place to stay. Since you ruined everything, you need to move out. I'm not asking, this is what you'll do. Let me know where to send the divorce papers. Sign the papers and don't resist the divorce. Otherwise, it will be painful for you and your boyfriend." Crying into her hands, she tried to speak. "He's not my boyfriend, and I don't love him. Can't we figure this out? Is there anything we can do? I know it's too late after what I did, but I can't live without you, and I'll do anything to keep us together. I never wanted to lose you. Please don't leave me." "Jessica, if it had only been about closeness, we might have had a chance to mend things through counseling or separation. But what really ended my love for you was that you shared a love with him that was supposed to be just for me. The words you spoke to him destroyed us and everything I felt for you. No, I'll never forget or forgive your betrayal. I never want to see or talk to you again. After the divorce is finalized, you'll vanish from my life forever." After hours of pleading for forgiveness, she left the next morning, staying with her parents until the house was sold. During the following week, the police interrogated me, trying to make me admit involvement. I hired a lawyer, informing them that without evidence, I wouldn't answer questions without a warrant. With no proof and an alibi, they left me alone. The incident was eventually reported as a random burglary and assault. Jessica and her family called, begging me to reconsider. I was told she loved me, couldn't live without me, and was sorry. They urged counseling, but I stopped answering calls, changed my number, and cut all ties. Yes, the loss was devastating. Every second of separation was painful, but I couldn't come to terms with her betrayal. Jessica, a 42-year-old single mother, lived on her salary in a one-bedroom apartment. The pleasant life she once enjoyed was gone. Her daughter and family blamed her for the failed marriage. Now alone, Mark was more focused on saving his own marriage. Treated poorly at work, Jessica was blamed for Mark's physical and marital problems. Unable to work together, she was transferred to an administrative role with the same pay. Her new job was dull, and she lost her prestigious position working with one of the partners. News spread that she was one of Mark's ex-girlfriends, and she was treated accordingly. With a job she despised, no prospects for promotion, no friends, no husband, and a family blaming her for the divorce, she sank into depression. She cried every night, missing Johnny intensely. Her heart ached constantly, and thoughts of her actions haunted her. Sarah tried to help, but it seemed irreversible. Jessica neglected herself, eating poorly and drinking heavily, claiming that without Johnny she had no reason to worry. When Sarah sought advice from her father, he sympathized but never reconciled. Stella orchestrated Mark's misery, making him pay for his infidelity. She dated younger men, keeping Mark around to cover expenses. Although they appeared together at events, they led separate lives. Mark would never have closeness again and would never find love for the rest of his life. He'd always remember when his life changed due to his desire for someone else's wife. He was incredibly angry with me and wanted to hurt me in the worst way possible. However, nothing happened for months. Later that year, I was having a drink with my colleagues when I was attacked and battered outside the bar. My friends came to help, but the attackers left before the police arrived. I spent 2 days in the hospital with broken ribs and 20 stitches. I believe they intended to kill me, and if it weren't for my friends, they might have succeeded. I knew it was revenge from Mark, and I wasn't surprised at all. 6 weeks later, feeling much better, I called Mark's office. "Mr. Diamond, please," I told his secretary. "Sorry, he's at a meeting. Can I take a message?" "Yes, tell him to meet me at Old One Cafe this Friday at the French Deli across the street." "I'm sorry, sir. I don't schedule appointments with Mr. Diamond." "Just leave a message. Write it down. Friday, 1 p.m., French Deli. Be there alone. Johnny." Just give it to him, and he'll understand what it means. "Thank you." Seated at a table facing the door, I waited for Mark. When he walked in alone, I motioned for him to sit. "What do you want?" he asked. Ignoring his outburst, I said, "Thank you for coming. Your people did a good job, but they didn't follow through because you ignored my warning. You forced me to act." Handing him a folded paper, I said, "Here's a link to a website created just for you. It operates from Syria with backup servers. It's untraceable. You're screwed. Check it out when you get back to your office." I omitted Jessica's face. "She shouldn't pay for your sins. After viewing the site, think about how your life will change." His anger grew. "You've already ruined my life. Just stop it or we'll kill you. That's why we're here. I want to end this. You took away the most precious thing in my life, my wife. You ruined our 20-year marriage and I can't let you go free. I risk being destroyed, but I'll avenge the thrashing your people gave me." "Okay, calm down. What do you want?" "Two things that are not subject to discussion. You will stop any retaliation against me or anyone I know, including Jessica. You will deposit $1 million into this account by the end of the day on Friday. If the funds are not in the account by 9 p.m. on Friday, I will take action. This paltry amount I'm asking should be considered a gift. If I agree, how do I know that you still won't destroy me? I'm a man of my word, trust me. I will say this, if you don't do this, then there is a 100% chance that this site will become famous by Saturday morning. I hope you suffer for the rest of your life for what you did to my happy marriage." The money was transferred. We sold the house and divided the property. Jessica had enough money to live a comfortable life if she continued to work or found another husband. Mark kept her working as part of our deal, but they were never close again. Jessica never remarried, rarely dated, and lived with the pain she caused both men. She had lost her marriage and the love of the man she wanted to be with for the rest of her life, and now found herself alone and depressed. She died before her 50th birthday, a broken, sad woman. Only her daughter Sarah was present at the ceremony to scatter the ashes. Johnny continued to work for several more years and retired to a small town by the ocean. He married a nice woman who liked him mentally, but he could never replace the special love that only Jessica could give him. He never spoke to her again and only heard about her from Sarah, whom he adored. They talked every day and remained close, but Sarah rarely mentioned her mother because she knew her father still loved her and did not want to awaken his pain. Jessica's passing saddened him, but it also brought final relief to the deep sadness he had kept locked away. I cheated, got pregnant, unsure of the father. Husband filed for divorce and left. "Are the girls ready yet?" I asked my ex-wife rudely as I stood at her door, which used to be our door, to pick up my 13 and 12-year-old daughters for the weekend. "Almost." "How are you, Sam?" Pauline asked, sounding almost genuinely concerned. "I only get 2 days off a month." "Make sure they're ready on time," I growled, ignoring her question. "I'm trying, Sam, but you know how it is with them. Can you give them a few extra minutes? So are you doing okay?" "I'll wait in the car," I snapped, turning around and heading back to my car. "Sam," I heard her say as I walked away. I didn't turn around. This was a familiar scene, her trying to ease her conscience and me ignoring her. About 5 minutes later, Karen, 13, and Wendy, 12, came out with a small bag. They jumped into my car with a chorus of "Sorry, Daddy," and my anger faded. Pauline was right. Getting girls that age ready was like herding cats, and I couldn't stay mad since I only had them for a couple of days. I tried to make those days special, avoiding everyday hassles. After catching me up on the last couple of weeks, I was ready to tell them the big news. They had been asking for a new Nintendo, and I could finally afford it. I was excited to share this with them, but when I did, I was disappointed by their reaction. "Oh, it's okay, Daddy," Karen said. "Daddy Dave already bought us a new toy and a bunch of games." My disappointment turned to outrage. "Daddy Dave? Goddamn Daddy Dave." If I felt on edge before, I was teetering now. Let me clarify. Dave had been my best friend since high school. He was a regular guy, more successful in business than in love. He wasn't into gambling or womanizing. He simply hadn't found the right woman. My kids called him Uncle Dave, and we trusted him like family. Pauline's closest friend was Aunt Daphne. Our marriage seemed solid. We still spent plenty of time together. Then, one Friday, Pauline dropped a bombshell. The kids were staying elsewhere for the weekend. I assumed she had planned a romantic getaway for us, but no. She revealed that she and Dave had fallen in love, and I received divorce papers the next day. She claimed they hadn't consummated their relationship, something I doubted and didn't care about. She spent that night with Dave and asked me to leave. I refused. I was unaware of a court order evicting me from the house. There were no misuse allegations, just a judge granting her temporary custody in the house, forcing me out. I didn't contest the divorce but made extreme demands, full custody and 75% of her income in alimony. Eventually, I grew weary of the battle and relented. I didn't pay child support due to our similar incomes, but it strained my finances. I lived frugally to afford things like a video game system for my daughters. Despite Pauline's attempts at civility, I harbored resentment. She got everything, a wealthy new husband, while I struggled with minimal time with the kids. With Dave's higher income and my alimony, they lived comfortably while I barely made ends meet. 2 months post-divorce, Pauline and Dave tied the knot. The biggest challenge was how the kids would react. I anticipated pushback or defiance, but they embraced it. Dave had been a fixture in their lives, so his presence wasn't confusing. They were pleased with 2 households. Since their wedding, I communicated only about the kids, offering no pleasantries. Now my children referred to Dave as Daddy. I tried to brush it off during the weekend, but as I dropped them off, I simmered with anger. After kissing them goodbye, they dashed inside, likely eager to try the new games Pauline had prepared. "I need to talk to you," I said, and Pauline's reaction showed she sensed my threatening tone. I turned and walked away from the house, and she followed. "What's wrong, Sam?" "Explain this Daddy Dave crap. They have one dad, me, so what's that about?" The girls wanted to call him something other than Uncle Dave since we got married. Calling him Uncle felt awkward. We tried just Dave, but that seemed weird, so we settled on Daddy Dave. And who suggested that? I did, but the girls liked it and agreed right away. I told them you might not like it, but they thought you could handle it. Please don't make this a bigger deal. It's not for you to decide how it should be. Hearing them call someone else Daddy, especially that idiot, is painful. He didn't steal your family. And about the video games, we just thought they'd waited long enough and weren't sure when you could do it. We wanted the girls to have them. Yeah, and show me up in the process, huh? Sure, let's show how great Daddy Dave is and what a loser their real dad is. You left me, married a rich guy, and now have all this money while I struggle. But you can buy them anything they want. It's not like that. It is exactly like that. God, you cow. I turned, walked back to the car, and sped away without looking back. I was so angry, the thought of a life sentence for destroying Daddy Dave wasn't on my bucket list. This went on for years. Pauline and Dave expected my anger to soften, but it didn't. They tried to talk to me about my life and hoped I'd move on, but I ignored anything not related to my girls. I hadn't had any serious relationships since the divorce. Money was tight. I distrusted women, and I was still furious. I stuck to one-night stands with no long-term prospects. Bitter, angry, and poor doesn't attract women. Counseling never crossed my mind. The last straw was the first weekend of June. School had just ended, and I was looking forward to a summer weekend with my girls. Karen, now 15, was mature and responsible, and Wendy was 14. I still cherished every moment with them. "Are the girls ready yet?" I asked, as Pauline opened the door, repeating the same exchange we'd had for years. "They're not here, Sam," Pauline said, looking confused. "What do you mean they're not here?" I almost exploded. "They went to the beach with Finley for a week. They sent you a letter a week ago." "Yes, and I replied that it was my weekend and I'd be there to pick them up." "Did you let them go?" "Of course, it's not my place to stop them." "Why miss the opportunity to screw things up more?" "Tell them I'll be here to talk when they get back," I said, walking away again. That week went by in a blur. I was angry, hurt, and frustrated. I only got 4 days a month with my daughters, and I didn't want to lose any of that time. If only I had known. I returned the following Friday night to talk about them going out of town against my wishes. Since the divorce, I had only stopped by the house a few times, always at the girls' request. This time I stepped into the living room with Pauline and Dave watching from the kitchen. The girls were waiting for me, and I struggled to keep my composure. "Mom said you wanted to talk about our trip with Finley this week," Karen began. "We sent you a letter. I emailed back that it was my weekend, and I expected you to be here. Dad, we wanted to go. I didn't ask for permission." "What?" I nearly screamed. "You're not even 16. You need your parents' approval." "I got Mom's permission. She said we could go if I coordinated with you." "And you thought a letter was enough?" "Dad, I'm 15. We're not little kids anymore. We want to do things with our friends. I thought you'd understand." "Are you saying you'd rather be with your friends than with me?" "Dad, we're growing up and want to spend time with friends." I can't plan my life around your custody schedule. We have plans almost every weekend, pool parties, trips to the beach. We're hardly home. It hit me that my daughters preferred their friends over spending time with me. It was like a knife to my heart. My anger turned to sadness, realizing this part of my life was over. I tried to hide my pain. Okay, so you want to give up weekend visits? I thought I heard Pauline sigh, but the girls didn't react. We're just really busy, Dad. That doesn't mean we don't love you. 4 days a month, and they couldn't even manage that. The rest of the time, they had Mom and Daddy Dave. There was no room for me anymore. I didn't expect my fatherhood to end when the girls became teenagers, but it did. Sure, girls, we'll get the visits over with. Have fun. They hugged me and thanked me, then ran to their rooms. They had no idea what they'd done to me. My place in their lives was gone. I stood up and headed for the door. Pauline approached me. Are you okay, Sam? I tried to pull myself together, but I'm sure I failed. Yeah, it's fine. I have opportunities I've been putting off. A buddy in North Carolina has been trying to get me out there for years. I headed for the exit, and Pauline quickly realized my words. Wait, Sam, you didn't say you were moving to North Carolina, did you? Yes, why not? They haven't needed me for years, thanks to you. Now they don't need me at all. This is the end result of what you set in motion, Pauline. There's nothing here for me anymore. You and Dave are their parents now. I'm out. Congratulations, you win. Tears filled my eyes. I needed to leave before I broke down. I quickly walked out and got into my car. It took me a moment to get the key into the lock. Maybe it was the tears that made it difficult. Sam, wait, Dave called out, placing a hand on my shoulder. I didn't respond. I just turned and punched him in the jaw, knocking him down but not out. Pauline rushed to him while I fumbled with my keys. Sam, don't do this. They're just at that age. They still love and need you, even if they don't realize it now. Leaving will devastate them. What do you want me to do, Paulie? Sit in my crappy one-bedroom apartment hoping they'll make time for me or be their backup plan if there's nothing else to do? It won't be like that, Sam. Of course it will. You heard them. All I looked forward to was their visits. Now that's gone. And you're breaking their hearts. I doubt it, but at least I won't be the only one heartbroken anymore. They were relieved they didn't have to visit me. Or honestly, they won't even notice I'm gone, at least for a while. Sam, please don't do this. I never wanted this. Maybe, maybe not. It doesn't matter. Maybe I'll see you again someday. I finally unlocked the car door. Dave got to his feet, both of them looking mournful. I got into the car and paused before closing the door. Take care of my girls. They nodded slightly as I drove away. I hoped they wouldn't tell the girls. I didn't want them visiting out of pity or obligation. It was time to go our separate ways. Breaking up a family is like losing cherished dreams. Pauline and I envisioned growing old together with visits from children and grandchildren. The end of my marriage shattered those dreams. I still hoped for future milestones like graduations and weddings, but they now felt distant. Maybe someday I'd reunite with the girls, but it felt like the end. I called my friend Tim, who offered me a job. The pay was better, and I'd continue paying child support, even though they didn't need it. I wanted to fulfill my obligations without the pain of being physically distant. I had my apartment lease terminated, packed my car, and drove to Durham. Tim set me up in his home services business, where I did repairs and pest control. Nights were tough, and I turned to drinking to cope. Tim's parties became a distraction, but my sadness lingered, especially since I hadn't heard from my daughters in weeks. My booze consumption increased, often leaving me intoxicated. I didn't form emotional connections with the women I met. At these parties, I was merely seeking familiarity. The routine persisted: drink, find a partner, pass out, and they'd leave by morning. Tim would provide breakfast, and I'd return home feeling miserable. Over time, I began forgetting my partner's names. The woman from Labor Day was unmemorable, and on Halloween, I couldn't even recognize her costume. Tim hosted a Veterans Day party shortly after Halloween, which everyone enjoyed. Thanksgiving approached, but without my daughters, and I drank heavily. Before Thanksgiving, I finally heard from my girls, but it wasn't the reunion I anticipated. Karen called to suggest skipping our visit to go shopping with Finley. Still unaware of my relocation, I didn't mention it and wished them a good time. Thanksgiving was lonely. I drank alone in my hotel room. Though Tim invited me over, I couldn't bear being around non-family. The next morning, I found several missed calls and texts, including a cheerful Thanksgiving message from my daughters and a voicemail from Pauline, which I reluctantly listened to. Sam, it's Pauline. I know we haven't talked because I assumed that's what you wanted, but the holidays can be hard, so I wanted to check on you. The girls called you, but they don't realize you've moved. Please remember they're still kids and very busy. They love you very much. I know you don't want to talk to me, but please let me know you're okay. An email or text is fine. I'm sorry for how things turned out. Please let me know you're okay. I deleted all messages and emails, then quickly texted Pauline to let her know I was alive, though not okay. I didn't want to, but it was easier than ignoring her. Feeling down, I grabbed another beer. For weeks, I was either working, drinking, or passed out. As Christmas and New Year's approached, I felt even more depressed, knowing I'd celebrate without my girls for the first time. Finally, I got the call I'd been dreading. My daughter's call about Christmas plans. We alternated holidays since the divorce, and this year I had Christmas Eve. They left a message to confirm. I took a couple of days to gather myself before calling back, but then Pauline called and left a voicemail, clearly annoyed. Sam, it's Pauline. I hope you missed the girl's message and didn't ignore it. I told them you moved, and they're hurt. They always thought they could see you whenever, and now they know that's not the case. I hope you're proud of hurting them. I don't trust you with them right now. You seem intent on punishing them for my actions. I was going to suggest they fly to you, but I'm not comfortable with that anymore. Please think about what you're doing. Don't ruin your relationship with them because you're mad at me. Call me if you want to talk. Merry Christmas, Sam. Goddamn cow, I muttered to myself. I had a few more beers and called her back. Sam, you goddamn cow, I slurred. Who do you think you are? You can't threaten me about seeing my kids when I can't see them anyway. Sam, are you drunk? Yeah, pretty much. You shouldn't drink so much, Sam. It's bad for you. What's it to you? You've taken everything I lived for. What do you care? Do I care about you, Sam? Yeah, you showed how much you cared by cheating on me and leaving me. You let the kids leave me too. I didn't do that, Pauline. You sent them away on my weekend so they'd never see me. You're a lying, manipulative, cheating strumpet. She took a deep breath. Sam, I know you're drunk and angry. Let's talk when you've had less to drink. Who are you to judge me? You're the cheater. I'm hanging up. With my best friend. Kicking me out, draining me, then judging me. You've got a nerve, Pauline. Pauline? She hung up. Damn cow. I spent Christmas alone, mostly lying in bed. I watched sports on TV, but every reminder of Christmas made me more depressed, leading to more drinking. I woke up during the Lakers game, either asleep or passed out, smiled as they lost by 20 points, and passed out again. Working for Tim's service company, we didn't get much time off. We had a contract to repair a house destroyed by its owners after foreclosure. Several of us, including plumbers and electricians, worked together. I helped with drywall, and it was a fun couple of days. These guys were funny and friendly, unlike the aloofness I'd felt from others before. Maybe it was because Tim and I were friends before I started working there, but these guys made me feel welcome. Around mid-morning, I saw Tim's truck pull up. He got out with another guy I recognized but couldn't name. They entered the house, greeted the crew, and headed toward me. Hey, Sam, can I talk to you for a minute? Sure, Tim. I always have time for the guy who signs my checks. The crew laughed, but Tim only smiled faintly. Let's go outside, Tim said, leading the way. The other guy stepped aside to give us privacy. How's it going, Sam? As good as could be expected, I replied, curious about the direction of this conversation. Have you had anything to drink today? No, Tim, of course not. Great, blow into this, he said, pulling out a breathalyzer. I eyed it warily. What's that for? Just need to be sure. I glanced back at my CO workers who quickly looked away. It was clear someone had reported me. Hesitantly, I admitted, I might have had a beer this morning. That's not too bad, he said, still holding out the breathalyzer. Realizing I had no choice, I blew into it. Tim checked the reading and his smile vanished. You failed, 0.04. That's more than just a beer this morning. Yeah, but I'm not legally drunk. That's for driving. On a construction site, if OSHA checks and finds you under the influence, it's a problem for me and a liability if someone gets hurt. Tim, I'm fine. What you do at home is your business, but here it affects us all. I want your keys. One perk of the job was using company cars. I handed over the keys. You're done for the day. Oscar will take you home and cover for you tomorrow. Come to my office and we'll talk. I stood there, humiliated and growing angry. You know what, Tim? I said, shoving my helmet at him. Screw you, I don't need this. I walked to the truck and waited for Oscar to take me home. We drove in silence except for my mumbled directions. When we arrived, I thanked him and slammed the door. Holy crap, I fumed. One of those idiots must have called Tim, screw them. I opened the fridge and grabbed a beer. Perfect, I thought. No work tomorrow. I woke up in a hospital room, unsure how I got there. A nurse entered. Good, you're awake. What's wrong? I asked. The doctor will be here soon. She checked my vitals and left. A few minutes later, a young, attractive Hispanic female doctor entered, reviewing my chart. Good afternoon, Mr. Beckman. How are you feeling? I didn't answer right away, trying to process how the beautiful woman in front of me was named Anderson. Mr. Beckman? I'm sorry. Based on your last name, I expected an older white guy, not a young, pretty woman. Thank you. My husband is a white guy, hence the name. So, how are you feeling? Really tired and kind of unimportant. What's wrong with me? You've consumed a large amount of alcohol over a long time, leading to alcohol poisoning and severe dehydration. If your friend hadn't called an ambulance, you might not have survived. A friend? She glanced at her papers. Tim Banks called the ambulance. Sure. Mr. Banks asked me to notify him when you're awake. Is that okay? I reluctantly nodded. Yeah, it's okay. You'll stay here for observation for a couple of days as your body detoxifies. Complications might require immediate intervention. Any questions? No, I don't think so. After giving instructions to rest, Dr. Anderson left. I turned on the TV for background noise and tried to relax. I felt fine, doubting I'd need a couple of days, but who was I to argue with a pretty doctor? About an hour later, there was a knock on the door and it opened slightly. I heard a man's voice. Are you dressed, Sam? Yes. Tim entered with his usual calm manner and stopped a few feet from the bed. How's it going? I'm going to live. I haven't decided if that's good or bad yet, I said with a half smile. I suppose a thank you wouldn't hurt. You don't have to, Sam. You can thank me by getting well and getting back to work. I didn't think I still had a job. You think you're the first employee to tell me to back off? We've been friends for a long time, and I'm doing everything I can to help you through this. I don't agree with all your decisions, but my advice is to get off your back, get your crap together, and rebuild your relationship with your kids. Don't let what? Pauline did ruin your life. I acknowledged he was correct. I was only injuring myself, perhaps the girls too. It was time to get my act together. Tim and I talked a while longer before he departed. Later that evening, I felt worse. The doctor attributed it to my body adjusting to sobriety. After about 24 hours without alcohol, I realized how dismal that sounded. Despite surviving the night, I checked out of the hospital the next day with referrals for counseling, psychiatry, rehab, and AA. Though I felt I had hit rock bottom and didn't need them, Tim's encouragement and my hospital stay were sufficient to set me on the right path. I took a few weeks off work, which I could afford, and returned feeling optimistic. The subsequent months were uneventful. I enjoyed Tim's Martin Luther King Jr. Day party without drinking, hesitant to test if I was an alcoholic. I intended to resume drinking eventually, but stuck to non-alcoholic beverages for the time being. The monthly gatherings grew dull. They initially offered socializing opportunities, but I found drunken, anonymous revelry unfulfilling. Thus, I skipped the Valentine's Day party and opted for a hearty steak dinner instead. On March 1st, my life took a turn. While out running errands one Saturday, I witnessed a woman with dark blonde curls stumble and injure her ankle on the sidewalk. Though others nearby ignored her, I hurried over to assist. "Are you okay?" I asked, knowing it was a silly question. Tears formed in her pale blue eyes as she looked up. "I think I sprained my ankle. We need to get you to the trauma center. I can call an ambulance or I can drive you myself if you prefer." I don't want to impose. It's no imposition, you just made my day more interesting. I'm Sam, by the way. Okay, if you're sure. Nice to meet you, Sam. I'm Hall. I helped her up and noticed she was pregnant. Oh yes, about 4 months, she confirmed. Then let's hurry. I picked her up, carried her to my truck, and drove to the emergency room. Inside, I got a wheelchair for Holly and helped her into it. She was taken straight to a room, and I waited in the lobby for 4 hours, playing games and browsing the web on my phone. I expected she would call her husband and I could leave, but no one came. Eventually, Holly came out in a wheelchair, pushed by a nurse in light blue scrubs. Holly was talking about getting a cab, but the nurse seemed to know I was waiting. When Holly saw me, she smiled brightly. The nurse nudged her towards me, and I helped her into my truck. I thanked the nurse, even though she had already turned away, and then got into the driver's seat. "I didn't expect you to still be here." "I was waiting for your husband, but when no one came, I stayed." "I don't have a husband. It's just me and my mom, and she's out of town." "Did you call her? She'd just worry and rush back." "I'll be fine. Since you've been waiting so long, could you give me a ride to my car?" I looked at her bandaged ankle. "Holly, I don't think you can drive with that ankle." "Oh, Sam, I didn't even think of that." "Let me take you to my house and we'll figure out how to get your car." "That's very generous, Sam, but I've already taken up a lot of your time." "I enjoy it. It's more interesting than sitting at home watching TV. I'd be happy to keep helping if you don't mind." "Thanks, Sam." She gave me directions to her house. I carried Holly from the truck into her home. As I headed toward the couch, she stopped me. "Sam, I really need the restroom. Do you mind?" I followed her directions and placed her in front of the restroom, waiting nearby. I ordered an Uber while I waited. She called out and I found her up and dressed. I carried her to the couch. "What now?" she asked. "I need to pick up your car. It's illegal to park there overnight." "How are you going to do that?" "I ordered an Uber to get it. Can I borrow your keys?" "You've done so much for me, but I appreciate it." She handed me the keys, giving me the license plate number and parking spot. As I waited for my ride, I stopped at the doorstep. "Holly, will you have dinner with me tonight?" "I'd love to, Sam," she smiled, "but I can't go anywhere. I'll grab something while picking up your car, and we'll eat here." I was about to leave when she spoke softly. "Sam," I turned to her, seeing a serious expression. "You remember I'm pregnant, right?" "Yes, Holly, I remember. It's just that many men aren't interested in an instant family. I wanted to make sure you knew. Of course, we just met, and there's a lot to learn about each other, but your pregnancy isn't a problem." "Okay, Sam, I just wanted to be sure you understand." "I understand," I said with a smile. "I'll be back with your car and dinner." I waited for my Uber, which arrived about 10 minutes later. The ride was uneventful, and I found her car easily. I picked up Italian food nearby and returned to Holly's house around 7 p.m. She had changed into a dress. I wanted to look nice for our first date. "You looked great before, but you still look better," I said. She smiled as I set the food on the table. By the time I came back, she was on her feet with crutches. I moved to help her, but she stopped me. "I need to practice. Mom won't be home for a few days." I motioned her to a chair and she sat down, smelling of freshly applied perfume. "You look and smell wonderful, Holly. I suddenly feel underdressed." "Oh, you look fine. I don't like men who are too formal." We chatted about everything. I told her about my job at Tim's company, Durham Commercial Services, and she shared about her part-time job at a local car dealership. Her mom worked as a legal secretary. Holly's father left when she was 5, and she hasn't seen him since. She was an only child. I told her about my failed marriage. She was shocked by what Pauline had done, but didn't seem pleased with my handling of the Karen and Wendy situation. Saying it out loud, I realized I wasn't pleased with myself either. Pauline was right. They were just acting like teenagers, and I needed to act like an adult. I had to figure out how to fix it. I purposely refrained from asking Holly about her 4-month pregnancy sans a partner. It wasn't my place, and I aimed to avoid any appearance of judgment. Stepping outside to give her privacy during her call with her mother, I admired the serene night, pondering over Holly's situation. Since my divorce, I hadn't pursued a long-term relationship, but perhaps it was time to reconsider. Did I want to be perpetually alone due to my ex's infidelity? Addressing the emotions stemming from my past marriage was imperative. After her call, Holly signaled for me to return inside, expressing gratitude for the privacy. We spent the evening chatting on the couch, deliberately avoiding the topic of her pregnancy. As the night progressed, our yawns hinted it was time to retire. Accompanied by her crutches, she escorted me to the door, where we shared a brief kiss and made plans for Sunday. Driving home, I felt elated, and I slept soundly. The next morning, I arrived at Holly's with breakfast from a nearby cafe. Knocking on the door, I waited as she answered, clearly just rising from bed. "Do you really get up this early every morning?" she asked, squinting and smiling. "Construction starts early. I've been waiting for a decent hour." "Well, you brought breakfast, so you're forgiven." We shared another brief kiss, and I made breakfast while she settled into a chair. She loved the food, as I knew she would. I suggested we spend the day exploring the countryside since I hadn't seen much of North Carolina apart from work and Tim's parties. It was a beautiful day, and we had a great time. We visited a museum that had motorized carts, so Holly didn't have to walk much. We had lunch at a small local diner and spent hours relaxing in a park. Holly often made light physical contact with me, which felt nice. By the time we got back to her place, she was very tired and her leg hurt. I helped her take a bath, covering the brace with plastic, and then helped her into bed. We agreed I would come over after work the next evening. I brought tacos from a local taqueria, and we talked while I gave her a foot massage. She soon dozed off. I tucked her into bed and prepared to leave. As I was leaving, she sleepily thanked me for coming and mentioned that her mother was coming home the next day. I figured she was letting me know she wouldn't need my help as much once her mother returned. The next night, I was in my apartment, preparing to watch a World War II documentary and forcing myself to eat a frozen meal. What exactly is Salisbury steak? Then the phone rang. "Hello? Where are you?" Holly's sweet voice asked. "I'm home." "Why aren't you here? I thought you were coming." "I thought you didn't want me there since your mom was coming home." "You reminded me of that last night," I replied, feeling a bit embarrassed. Men, she said, I told you so you'd be ready to meet her. We've been waiting for you. Okay, I'm on my way. Holly met me at the door with a lingering kiss and put her arms around my neck. I could get used to this, I thought. Inside, her mom, Barbara, was setting the dining table. They looked almost like twins, except Barbara's blonde curls were more groomed. She was fit and only slightly heavier than Holly. When I moved for a handshake, she hugged me tightly and kissed my cheek. I'm so happy to meet you, Sam. Holly has told me so much about you. It's my pleasure, Miss Allison. Call me Barbara. And for the record, Allison is Holly's last name, not mine. Mine is Smith from my third husband. I don't plan on a fourth. Holly rolled her eyes at her mom's revelation, which was helpful since the food was ready. I washed my hands, and we sat down to eat. Barbara had made delicious stuffed pasta and garlic bread. I'm sorry for the confusion, Barbara. I thought Holly meant I wasn't expected since you were coming home. It's okay, Sam. Misunderstandings happen. I was just happy to meet Holly's new boyfriend. I glanced at Holly, who smiled at me. She's told me quite a bit about you. I understand you're in construction. I work for Durham Commercial Services. We handle construction, pest control, electrical, and plumbing. It's more home maintenance than construction. Do you like it? I like working with my hands. My boss hinted I might become a project manager soon. What do you do? I'm a legal secretary, working directly with senior partners. I have a lot of late nights and travel. Thank you for taking care of Holly when she was injured. It was my pleasure, Barbara. It's been a long time since I've had someone to care for. I felt a pang of sadness as memories of my girls surfaced. Holly and Barbara seemed to notice. We chatted throughout dinner, and I helped clean up. By the time we finished, it was late. Holly and Barbara said goodnight, and Barbara hugged me again before heading to bed. Holly asked me to turn off the lights while she watched a movie on Netflix. We lay down together on a deep couch, with me behind her. It was a romantic movie, but I focused on the beautiful woman in front of me. Soon we made love. The credits were rolling, and we lay happily together. Minutes passed, and we both drifted to sleep. I woke up about an hour later. You should probably get going, you have work tomorrow. Holly broke the silence. I knew she was right, but I didn't want to leave. I was willing to get up early and go home before work if needed. We walked to the front door. I'll see you tomorrow. As I drove away, I saw her still standing in the doorway, waving. Last night felt like an exploration to see how we fit together. I didn't want to leave again, so I brought a change of clothes for tomorrow just in case. I wouldn't mention it to Holly unless it came up. Barbara met me at the door, and I joined Holly on the couch. When Barbara called us to dinner, there were only 2 plates. Holly and I sat down, and Barbara excused herself, returning 30 minutes later looking ready for a night out. If Holly didn't mention, I have a date tonight. I'll be back in the morning. Have a nice evening. I'd been at the construction site for a little over 2 weeks since Holly fell. We spent almost every night together, though some nights were just sleeping because I was overworking myself. Events repeated as Tim and Oscar drove up to the site together. I glanced around to see if anyone looked guilty of snitching on me, but nothing seemed unusual. I wasn't worried since I hadn't had a drink since the hospital, but I was annoyed at another attempt to snitch. Tim headed to the house where we were working, and Oscar waited by the truck. Tim praised the workers and then approached me. Got a minute, Sam? I nodded and followed him, expecting trouble. No trouble, Sam. I was visiting sites and wanted to check in. You haven't been to the last couple of parties, which I get, and I just wanted to see how you're doing. I'm doing great, Tim. I've started seeing someone. That's great, Sam. Any luck with the kids? I'll need some time off to fly down and see them. Just let me know when and for how long, and I'll make sure you're covered. I'll check flights tonight and let you know. I flew out the following Tuesday, assuming the girls might not be home over the weekend. Hoping to keep them overnight, I splurged on a nicer hotel room with 2 double beds, determined to repair our relationship. As the plane flew through the clouds, I thought about Holly and our goodbye. She helped me book flights and pack. She was getting around better, but I still carried her up the stairs to my apartment, and for the first time, we made love in my bed. We returned to her house when it was time for me to leave for the airport. She said goodbye at the door. I'm going to miss you, Sam. Yep, I love you. She looked worried as she said she loved me for the first time. She shouldn't have worried. I lifted her chin to look into her eyes. I love you too, Hollywood. I'll be back as soon as I can. She smiled broadly, hugged me again, and then I left. The warm feeling stayed with me all the way to Austin. My flight landed in the afternoon. I grabbed a bite to eat, checked into the hotel, and bought a few things for my stay. I waited, knowing the girls would come home from school around 4:30. I assumed they still did homework until dinner, sticking with that assumption until I found out otherwise. I pulled up to the house in my rental car at 5:15. Pauline's Toyota and an old Nissan were in the driveway, but Dave's car was missing, likely still at work. No one came out as I walked up, so I knocked on the door. A voice called out, "Coming!" and Pauline appeared. She looked as beautiful as ever, but I realized I had no feelings for her anymore. She hugged me tightly, surprising me. "Sam, oh my God, you're back. The girls will love it," she said. "No, Pauline, I haven't moved back. I flew in to see the girls." She looked disappointed, likely for the girls' sake. "Oh, they're working on their homework. I'll get them."
Wait, Pauline, I need to tell you something first.
She closed the door and listened, looking alarmed. "I'm sorry for how I spoke to you on the phone. I was hurt and angry. I said you were drunk," she added. "Yes, I was. I couldn't take care of myself, let alone the girls. You didn't deserve that, and I wanted to apologize. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it. It's been hard for everyone. Are you here long?" "I'm flying out Sunday. I was hoping the girls could stay with me for a few days." "Why not for the whole time? I'll pack for them." "Thank you, Pauline. Can you come over tomorrow to talk after you take the girls to school?" "Or just us?" Taking a deep breath, I agreed. "Of course, Pauline." She smiled, pleased. "Okay, tomorrow then. I'll get the girls." A minute later, the girls came running out, tackling me with apologies and "I love you." We ended up on the lawn with them piled on top of me. I stopped them to speak. "Girls, you don't need to apologize. What happened was my fault. I didn't handle it well." "But we could have been more careful," Wendy said. "You'd be giving teenagers a bad reputation," I joked. "Let's focus on moving forward. Your mom said you can stay with me until Sunday, so pack your bags." "But this weekend," one started. "Don't worry about this weekend," Pauline interrupted. "Go and get ready." The girls ran off and I asked Pauline, "This weekend?" "We were planning to take them to the lake, but this is more important." "Thank you, Pauline. I didn't mean to disrupt your plans." She nodded and went to check on the girls. I ensured my rental car had room for their bags, and soon we were on our way. At the hotel, we unpacked and went to Texas Roadhouse for dinner. I groaned when Karen ordered a salad, but Wendy made up for it by ordering a steak and baked potato. Sometimes you have to live a little. We spent the evening catching up. Karen had found a boyfriend named Rob, who was in several of her classes. She showed me a picture, and he seemed nice enough, though as a father, it's never easy to see your daughter with a boyfriend. After some time, I made them finish their homework while I relaxed online, feeling grateful that my past anger hadn't cost me my relationship with my daughters. They caught me looking at them a few times and we exchanged smiles, which was sweet. The next morning, I drove them to school and then headed to my old house to talk to Pauline. I didn't see the point since we were long divorced, but I agreed. Pauline opened the door as I arrived and offered me water. We sat at the kitchen table, the same place where she'd once told me she wanted a divorce. "Thanks for coming, Sam," she started. "Unless it's about the kids, I don't see the point," I replied. "Sam, it's been 4 years and we've never really talked. I know you were hurt and part of me still cared. I hoped your anger would fade, but it hasn't. Why? Has anything changed?" "No, nothing's changed. You still cheated on me." She tried to interrupt, but I stopped her. "Whether you had physical contact with him before or after serving me, you still cheated. You lied about where you were, spent time with him, and developed feelings that led to you leaving me. You destroyed our family and left me struggling, seeing the girls only 4 days a month while you got the majority of their time and financial stability. Sam, I didn't marry Dave for the money. We love each other and are happy."
Good for you, but that doesn't help me.
"Why should I be happy just because you are? I wanted you to know I didn't divorce you to hurt you or for money. It just happened." "Great. I'm glad ruining my life didn't trouble you too much. See, you always twist things to make me seem evil. That's not what it's about. Whether you intended to or not, you knew it would happen. Divorce usually means the mother gets the kids and the father becomes part-time." I slammed my hand on the table. "It wouldn't have happened if you stayed true. You had to open yourself up to fall for Dave. All those times you spent together were a direct attack on our marriage and you did nothing to stop it. If you think we can be friends, you're wrong. I'll be polite when necessary, but that's it."
Sam, you're right.
"I'm sorry, I was wrong, but isn't there a way for you to forgive me, even if you can't forget?" I tried to stay calm. "Pauline, because of you and that idiot, I lived like a broke college student for years, barely having enough to eat and living in a crappy apartment. I'm sorry, Sam, but how could I have known that? You didn't know because you chose not to know. You knew my income, where I lived, and the rent was on the website. You knew how much child support you were getting. It was simple math, Pauline, but you didn't care to find out what situation you left me in. You had your life and a new, wealthier husband. Who cared about me? The girls didn't say anything, so I figured you ignored it. I made sure my pantry and fridge were full when they visited. The rest of the time, I lived on ramen and mac and cheese, saving to take them out and buy that video game. You bought it anyway, like it was nothing. You know what? Screw civility. If we have to be in the same place, just stay away from me, Sam. Is there anything else you want to say? Pauline? This may be your last chance. Sam, I'm sorry, I had no idea it was this bad. You're right, it never occurred to me to find out. I thought you'd say something. Yeah, having my wife leave me for my best friend wasn't humiliating enough. Let me tell them how hard I'm struggling financially. Pauline sighed, thinking. I wanted to leave but stayed to finish this. Sam, you're right, I didn't see your perspective. It was easier for me not to know the truth. I felt guilty and assumed you were managing. There's no point in facts ruining your reality, is there? I guess it was naive to think we'd all be friends again. I guess so. But we have our daughters to raise. I'd like to work out visits over the summer and vacations. Of course, Sam. I'll never keep them from you. As long as you're in a good place, we can work something out. Despite the unpleasant conversation, I was glad it was over. Now I knew Pauline's attempts to talk were just to ease her guilt. I picked up the girls from school, and we went to a mini golf course. We had a great time and then headed back to the hotel. They did homework while I ordered pizza. Over dinner, they asked me about my life in North Carolina. I apologized again for my past behavior, and they reassured me they were happy we were back together. They were also curious about Holly. Geez, Dad, Wendy said, you're almost done with us and now you're starting over? That's another 18 years. You know you're almost 40, right? We laughed, and it was great to banter with them again. I think I remember that. With my advanced age, I might need a modified wheelchair to keep up with a young kid. We all burst into laughter. After dinner, they did more homework while I surfed the internet. I called Holly when they were asleep, and we caught up, expressing how much we missed each other. After we hung up, I went to bed. The rest of the visit was similar: dinner on Friday, bowling, and mini-golf on Saturday. We didn't have to worry about school, so I had an early flight on Sunday and wanted to spend as much time with them as possible. They didn't mind missing out on friends or the lake. On Sunday morning, I drove them home. At their insistence, I went inside to say goodbye to Pauline. I tried to be a good role model, but it took all my energy. I hadn't seen Dave, and I assumed he was avoiding me. The flight home was bittersweet. I missed my girls, but was glad everything went well. I really missed Holly and looked forward to seeing her again. I took a cab from the airport straight to her house. Barb opened the door and directed me to Holly's bedroom. She's waiting for you, Barb said, smiling and winking. By June, I had moved in with Holly and Barbara. I was there almost every night, so when my lease ended, I didn't renew it. This saved me a lot on rent, although I insisted on contributing to household expenses. I sent my daughters to visit in mid-June after school ended, giving them a week to relax before spending Father's Day with me in North Carolina. Holly bonded with them instantly, taking them out for fun activities while I was at work. Every night, Karen and Wendy would tell me how much fun they were having and ask when I would propose. I confided that I already had the ring and was just waiting for the right moment. They loved being in on the secret. We had many tears when the girls left at the end of June. I hoped they could visit again before school started in August, but it wasn't guaranteed. The next planned visit was Thanksgiving. I wanted to visit them in Texas, but with work and Holly's upcoming delivery, I wasn't sure if that would work out. We decided to celebrate the 4th of July at Tim's party. When we arrived, Tim greeted us by name, and I realized for the first time that he and Holly knew each other. We didn't get to talk much, but he congratulated Holly on the baby. I went to get food for us, knowing Holly's appetite had increased. As I loaded my plate, Tim approached me. You didn't tell me you were dating Holly. I didn't know it mattered, I replied. I didn't know you knew each other. She's a friend of a friend. She came to some parties last year, including a Halloween party. He looked thoughtful, so I asked, What's going on, Tim? How far along is she? He asked. About 8 months. Why? Do you remember the Halloween party? Not much, I was still drinking then. Why? I saw you go into a spare bedroom with Holly that night. She was dressed as Wonder Woman with a dark wig and a mask. I paused, remembering that night. Okay, let's say you're right. So what? Sam, this could be your baby. Tim's words hit me hard. Holly and I hadn't discussed our pasts much. It was time to do that. I set the food aside and found Holly. Seeing the look on my face, she became worried. Sam, what's wrong? She asked as I sat her down. Holly, I never asked about how you got pregnant. I thought it was your business, but now I feel I need to ask. I've always considered it my business. Why do you need to know? Do you trust me, Holly? Completely, Sam, with my life. I promise I'll explain, but first, can you tell me what happened? She paused, then continued. Terry had broken up with me a few months before. We'd been together for years, and he kept saying he didn't need a marriage certificate to commit. He left me for a 20-year-old blonde with fake bosoms. It was devastating. What did you do? Some women get promiscuous to prove their desirability. I withdrew. I ignored people and became very depressed. My mom eventually pushed me to do something, so I agreed to go with friends to Tim's Halloween party. I'd met Tim before, but didn't really know him. He was okay with me coming because my friends had told him what happened. I didn't drink much, but I was pretty drunk. There was this guy at the party, and I was pretty needy, and we ended up in one of the bedrooms. He's the father of my baby. I'm sorry, Sam, I never wanted to tell you about this. It's okay, Holly, I understand, but this has a point. Are you sure he's the father? Was there anyone else around that time? She looked curious but answered, No, Sam, I haven't been with anyone else since Terry broke up with me until our first time together. What did this guy look like? I don't really know. He was taller than me and in good shape. We were all in costumes and masks. What kind of costume? Sam, why does this matter? Please, Holly, it's important. He was wearing a Scottish costume with a loose white shirt and a kilt. He had a beret and a set of kids' plastic bagpipes. I showed her a picture on my phone. Did he look like this? Her eyes widened and she jumped up. This is him. Why do you have his picture? Babe, I needed to be sure before I said anything. What are you sure about? Holly, the person in this picture is me. She looked stunned and collapsed into a chair. Tim took a picture of me at the party last year. Holly, I think the baby you're carrying is mine. She stared at me, then looked down at her stomach and back up to me. Is it your baby? Looks like it. Oh my God, Sam, wishes really do come true. What? I asked, confused. Since I met you, I wanted it to be your baby, not some random stranger's. I know that didn't matter to you, and that's one of the reasons I love you so much. But I wanted it to be our baby in every way. And now it is. Oh, Sam, I'm so happy. Holly and I got married at the courthouse a few weeks before Ashley Barbara Beckman was born. After Holly recovered from childbirth, we threw a big party. Barbara surprised everyone by marrying one of the firm's partners and retiring to travel in an RV. She confided in me that she was waiting for Holly to decide on her next steps. Eventually, she narrowed down her dating pool to one person. With nothing tying us to North Carolina but my job, we moved to Texas to be closer to my daughters. I landed a better-paying job thanks to my experience with Tim, allowing Holly to stay home full-time with our growing family. During my time in North Carolina, Tim didn't settle down with anyone long-term. Back in Texas, after 2 years, we attended a wedding where we met a bride we didn't know. By the time I returned to Austin, Karen was starting college at UT, and Wendy was finishing high school. She had options for college, and I supported her decisions. Pauline and Dave hit a rough patch, possibly due to trust issues stemming from Pauline's past infidelity. It coincided with Karen leaving for college, leading Dave to have more free time. While I didn't dwell on their problems, part of me saw it as karma.
For some, the night brings restful peace, while for others, it heralds a thrill of anticipation. As a college student, my family's home has always been a two-story haven. We used to freely roam between the floors, utilizing multiple rooms until a few years back when my father's business faced a downturn. Consequently, we installed a door on the first floor and started renting it out. Our neighborhood is bustling with companies, and though it's over a 10-minute walk to the nearest subway station, its convenient location makes it a desirable place to live. My family resides on the second floor, which houses 2 rooms, similar to the first floor, that's now leased to tenants, currently in its 3rd turnover. A newly wed couple from out of town chose our home for its cleanliness and proximity to the husband's workplace. At first, their life seemed sweet and loving until it wasn't. Loud arguments became frequent, with the husband often berating his wife. One night, as we were finishing dinner and watching Netflix, a clash erupted downstairs. The husband was accusing his wife of not answering her phone all day, to which she retorted she had been in meetings. My mother mentioned that the husband tends to vent his frustration on his wife after drinking. The wife, Serafina, is quite beautiful with a tall, slim figure and long, neatly tied hair. She teaches children after school and is quite the introvert, usually busy with work during the day and returning home in the evening to manage household tasks. Serafina is also an excellent cook, once sharing delicious, homemade cheese tortillas with us, reminiscent of what you'd find at a taco franchise. My mother admired her for being so diligent, and they shared meals together occasionally. However, Serafina's husband seemed distrustful, unable to comprehend that his wife couldn't answer the phone during her teaching or meetings. Their disputes escalated until Serafina sought refuge in our home. Serafina's uncle, who is also her father, went downstairs after hearing about an argument she had with her spouse. Downstairs, the man questioned Serafina about why she was wearing a short skirt at home, asking if she was seeing any of her teachers at school. Serafina explained that she had ordered the skirt online, thinking her husband, who had just come home from work, would like it. However, her husband doubted her, questioning if she had worn it to school since it was delivered that morning. He had been overly attentive since they started dating, which Serafina initially enjoyed. But this attention turned into suspicion and later disbelief, even when she told the truth. This suspicion has overshadowed their newlywed bliss, making Serafina doubt if they can continue living together and regretting their marriage. Her mother took her hand and suggested she spend the night at their house. Since I snore loudly, my parents decided to sleep in the living room, offering my room to Serafina. Despite knowing she's married, I can't help but have feelings for her. She's beautiful and kind, and no one I've met on blind dates compares. I've admired her for the gentle way she interacts with everyone, including the neighborhood kids. I wish I could spend personal time with her, but I know it's not right. Yet, today felt special because Serafina came to our house, and I was thrilled, almost to the point of shouting in joy. I wanted to confront her husband for his behavior, but it's not my place to interfere in their personal matters. Serafina confided her marital issues to my mother and cried. I wanted to comfort her, but felt helpless. My mother wanted to ensure she had a safe place to rest, comforting her until she calmed down. My mother asked me to clean my room so Serafina could sleep there. I prepared the bed for her, saying, "Don't worry about it, just try to get some rest," even though it might be hard to sleep. Since it was warm, I decided to sleep on the living room sofa, and Serafina felt guilty for taking my room. So I wandered into my room half asleep after a middle-of-the-night bathroom trip. By habit, I climbed into bed and fell asleep, only to be jolted awake in the morning by a loud, "Yikes, what is this?" To our surprise, it was just the two of us who heard that. Serafina was there beside me, and as it turned out, we had ended up sharing the bed. Honestly, nothing happened between us. Serafina left early that morning for her place, and all was quiet on her end. Things remained calm for a while after that day. Serafina teaches cooking classes. One day, with only a morning class, she was heading home with a bag of pancake mix from the grocery store. At the entrance to the alley, we bumped into each other, and seeing the grocery bag, Serafina chuckled. "Making pancakes?" I replied. "It's my first time trying. Got some syrup too," she suggested, making them together at her place since she had no classes that day. I asked if it was really okay, and she reassured me that things had been fine lately, inviting me in. She mixed the pancake batter with eggs and milk in a stainless bowl, then heated a wide pan, greased it, and poured the batter in. The batter sizzled softly, turning a lovely brown. Skilled with the spatula, she flipped them until warm pancakes were ready. Encouraged to try, I clumsily made my own pancakes. Aside from instant noodles, this was my first cooking attempt. We made several pancakes, topped them with whipped cream and syrup, and added koi and strawberries Serafina had prepared. She brewed coffee and brought it to the table, revealing it was her birthday, and was pleased to celebrate with our pancake cake. Surprised, I suggested going out for a meal later. Later, with her phone volume up, we headed to a nearby wood-fired pizza place. Serafina seemed anxious, possibly worried about a call from her husband. I couldn't understand why he would doubt such a kind and good-hearted wife. Nearly done with our pizza, she received a text saying her husband had to leave for a sudden business trip and wouldn't call that night. Serafina's face lit up with relief. Serafina was feeling a bit upset that her husband didn't wish her on her birthday. However, she mentioned going out to eat with Thaddeus brought a fresh vibe, but since her husband is the suspicious type, she insisted on heading home early. We exchanged numbers quickly and rushed back. That day, as I climbed the stairs, I hoped for another chance to meet. A week later, on the same weekday as Serafina's birthday, I bumped into her at the local grocery store's tasting section, where she was with her mother-in-law. She mentioned her mother-in-law would be staying for about 3 more days before leaving. The next day, while I was skipping rope in the yard, Serafina's mother-in-law complained of severe stomach pain. Her husband was still at work, so I hailed a taxi and took Serafina and her mother-in-law to the hospital. A week later, I met Serafina again. Her mother-in-law had gallstones and had undergone surgery to remove her gallbladder, but was now recovering well at home. Serafina had been taking care of her, putting her kids' after-school activities on hold. She said, "If it weren't for you, that is, my mother-in-law would have been in big trouble. She's so grateful to you that she insisted on thanking you personally, and even gave you some money to treat us to a meal when she gets the chance." Seizing the moment, I quickly joined them for dinner. I enjoyed my favorite seafood spaghetti and had a beer. Serafina began to vent about regretting her marriage, but I had no similar experiences to share, so I just listened. After opening up, she felt relieved and mentioned, "My husband just left for a business trip to China yesterday. He'll be gone for a month. I'm free for a while. I couldn't miss this chance," and mentioned, "Coincidentally, my parents are away for their anniversary trip to Vietnam and will be back in 3 days." That night, in my room, Serafina and I created a special atmosphere. It was a new experience for me, and she smiled patiently at my awkwardness. The next day, we spent a lovely time at her place. A year has passed since then. Serafina says her husband's attitude hasn't changed, but she finds other reasons to be happy, viewing his suspicion as a form of affection. Sharing secrets with me has become a delightful part of her life. Our secret encounters feel thrillingly delicate,